Mobility was founded in 2017. We really had two main ideas. And one of them was a contrarian technology view on how to build autonomous vehicles that was really based on some of the painful learning that I'd done at MIT, at Michigan, at Ford, and even Toyota. But the second key idea was that I spent a bunch of time in companies that ended up spending a lot of their effort in R&D mode.
hmm
One of the lessons that I learned early on in my startup career was that there is nothing quite so motivating as having a customer on the phone yelling at you.
So, before we jump into today's episode, I want to share a quick word from our partners at Terawatt. We all know the future of ride hail and autonomy is electric. New fleets are entering markets and need a base of operations, places to charge up and get back on the road. But they can't afford downtime, and that's where Terawatt infrastructure comes in. They take something complex and expensive, fleet charging infrastructure, and delivers, letting fleets focus on their core business of serving rides. Terawatt is building high powered charging hubs strategically placed right where ride hail demand is its highest. So think about 30 plus fast chargers in a central business district. Now that's a lot of power. Their sites are also designed to optimize AV fleet performance with 98% charger uptime, infrastructure for data offload, and thoughtful layouts that get vehicles in and out fast, all for a monthly fee. You can check them out at terawattinfrastructure.com, and we'll also leave contact information for the company in the show notes. All right, on to the episode. Ed Olson is the founder and CEO of Mobility. He has focused on the development of autonomous vehicle technology for more than 2 decades, including co-leading autonomous vehicle development at Toyota Research Institute and helping to develop Ford Motor Company's autonomous vehicles. He is a doctorate in electrical engineering and computer science from MIT and is a professor of computer science at the University of Michigan. Ed, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
All right. Usually I'm pretty good with the bios, but I had a couple slip ups, but I feel like that's because you've got such an impressive bio. So you've been at this for a while. Do you think now is the most exciting time for AVs, in the past 10 or sounds like 20 years of your career?
Well, we got started in the DARPA Urban Challenge, and
hmm
part of that was very exciting times because it was the first time that cars were interacting with other cars. Before there'd been sort of follow the GPS breadcrumb trail, but this was
hmm
2007, the first time cars were interacting with other vehicles.
Yeah.
But then there was this sort of long winter, and I think a lot of us kind of were wondering, is this ever going to happen? But we really are at an inflection point, and I think Waymo's done a great job with their vehicles and their deployments, giving everybody a real taste of how great an autonomous vehicle can be.
Yeah.
And the opportunity now for us is to go into that same market and deliver our version of a very similar product.
Yeah. Do you think the inflection point was these paid driverless rides from Waymo, for example? Because I still feel like it's an interesting kind of dichotomy. If you're in a city where you can take a ride, it's like, wow, it's here, it's ready. But if you're in somewhere like New York and you've never seen a Waymo, maybe you've never taken one, right? And there's millions of people there, it kind of might still seem far away.
Yeah, I think there are almost two different gates that we're passing
hmm
through. The first one is sort of a technological feasibility gate.
Yeah.
And I think this is where now clearly there are points on the board.
hmm
We can all see that it can happen.
Yeah.
But the commercial side, that's the second gate,
Mhm.
is now very challenging. So if you've built a vehicle and it works great, but it's super expensive, that's going
Mhm.
to limit the kind of markets that you can go to, and that's going to limit adoption. So I think the real challenge right now in the industry is, yes, you've got to have technology that works, but can you make the commercial side work?
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear how you guys are planning to make that work. Before we dive into commercialization, though, tell me about May Mobility. What makes you guys stand out relative to the rest of the field?
Yeah, so May Mobility was founded in 2017. We're based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We started off with six guys and $0 in the bank. So definitely have scaled a long
Well,
way.
that should be on a t-shirt, I think.
But we really had two main ideas. And one of them was a contrarian technology view on how to build autonomous vehicles that was really based on some of the painful learning that I'd done at MIT, at Michigan, at Ford, and even Toyota.
hmm
How are you going to build these systems so that they can generalize, so that they can handle situations that they've never seen before?
Yeah.
Fundamentally rejecting the idea that data by itself is the answer, that
hmm
architecture does matter. And I'm guessing we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the second key idea was that I spent a bunch of time in companies that ended up spending a lot of their effort in R&D mode.
hmm
One of the lessons that I learned early on in my startup career was that there is nothing quite so motivating as having a customer on the phone yelling at you. And so part of the strategy for May was to get out into the world, to get
Hmm.
customers quickly as we possible, and to be able to tap into that stream of information. Customers will tell you what's important,
Yeah.
how you're going to solve their problem, what business models are going to work. And that has in large part informed how we've navigated the space, how we've controlled our spending to make sure that we are building products that can scale economically, not just technologically.
Got it. What does the business model look like today, and where are your customers today?
Today, I think we're seeing really two different theses about how you can build the economic model. Waymo is more of a vertically integrated approach
Hmm.
where, they're going to build the technology. They're probably going to have a Waymo branded app as they do in San Francisco. Whereas, and the advantage of that is that you don't have to do revenue share with
Hmm.
nearly as many people. You get to keep more of the revenue. The other strategy is really partnership driven, and this is where main mobility is. Building vehicles is really hard. We're going to lean on Toyota, one of our longest partners and investors, to build vehicles for us. We're going to partner with Lyft and Uber and others to help
Hmm.
generate demand. We're going to partner with others yet to help with operations of the vehicles. And why are we doing this? Well, because it allows us to focus our resources on the autonomy itself.
Got it. And I guess talking about, one thing that stood out to me with May Mobility, I guess, let's start with the vehicle. What is the vehicle you're using? It's a Toyota minivan?
Yeah, it's a Toyota Sienna.
Got it. Hybrid, electric.
Yeah, a hybrid vehicle, and I think actually it is probably the best platform in the market today
Hmm.
for ride hail.
Got
So
it.
it's 3 rows. You can seat lots of people in there, luggage. We have a version that accommodates wheelchairs, so
Hmm.
people
Oh, wow.
who have disabilities can use our vehicles. They're inexpensive, they're reliable, and they're just a great platform.
Got it. I took my first trip as a family of five. We've got three kids now. And I will say, though, I haven't quite pulled the trigger on the minivan yet. I don't know if I sort of refuse to go with the minivan, but it is very practical. I had to order an Uber XXL, which I didn't even know was an option, and I got a minivan, So, like you said, they're actually kind of sneaky for those who maybe don't have one. They are sneaky, large, very, the sliding doors actually are pretty nice. So there are a lot of positive attributes, I guess you would say. But what about the look of the minivan? Is there any downside there, versus like a sleek, cool sedan or, kind of like a fancy SUV?
Oh, I think the Sienna is pretty sexy at the end of the day. When it solves the problems, right?
Yeah.
You can toss a bike in there without taking the wheels off.
Yeah.
You know, you can put a sheet of 4x8 lumber in the back.
Mhm.
It fits. Like this is just incredibly practical, and I think for a lot of people when they're going about their daily lives, practical is sexy. And maybe if you're going to go off to the track, don't bring your Sienna, but that's a totally different optimization problem.
Yeah. So you're using Siennas, and let's talk a little bit about the hardware and the technology that's on these vehicles. What sensor suite is on the vehicles that you guys are using?
Yeah, so our approach is very pragmatic. What's going to provide the capabilities that our customers want with an
Hmm.
level of safety at a price point that makes economic sense? And today, that means all of the above. That means Lidar, radar, and camera. So we have 5 Lidars on our vehicles. I think the camera is about 11 cameras now and 5 radars. And I
Gotcha.
think that there's sort of an interesting spectrum in the space. You've got a lot of folks saying, well, one person in particular saying cameras, cameras, cameras only. And then, the majority of folks looking at sort of multimodal systems where you get all that robustness and reliability that comes with that. But I think one of the big misconceptions is that, cameras are cheap and lidars are expensive.
Hmm.
And I actually think both of those are at best misleading statements. So cameras, the sensors themselves are inexpensive,
Hmm.
but the GPU to process those cameras adds up in a hurry. It's a lot
Got
of
it.
it's a lot of silicon. It still adds to the bill of materials price and
Is that
supply.
because there's 11 cameras? Because there's physically more cameras, then you need more GPUs to process those inputs?
That's right. And that's where a
Mm.
lot of the power in an AV goes today to just pushing pixels through these deep networks to power your perception system. And conversely, oftentimes you're spending all that power to try to figure out, is that car ahead of me 23 meters away or is it 25 meters away?
Yeah.
Or you could use a LiDAR, which bounces some photons off of it, and physics tells you the answer.
Hmm.
Now, today, LiDARs in the US are expensive, but there's nothing fundamentally expensive about a LiDAR. And we already see this in China with some very low cost, $100 kinds of LiDARs.
Right.
So our view here is let's build a product that's going to have the performance capabilities and price point with an eye towards let's ultimately aim to outperform human.
Hmm. What is the price point that you're going for with this Toyota Sienna and the 5 LiDAR, 5 radar, 11 camera?
So I think the reason you're seeing a lot of AV companies now focusing on ride hail is
Hmm.
because you support a comparatively more expensive vehicle.
Right.
So AVs today, because the supply chain is less mature, nobody's making LiDARs by the millions. Nobody's
Hmm.
making even the compute frameworks by
Yeah.
by the millions yet. So the unit costs tend to be pretty high. And that's true for us. It's true for Waymo. It's true for
Hmm.
everybody. So that's why you're seeing the focus on ride hail in the near term for those who want to commercialize now, because you can drive the asset utilization high enough so that you still have an acceptable payback period on that car.
Yeah. I mean, I think the basic question though that everyone wants to know is how much does the car cost with all the sensors, right? We just did a comparison last week of the Apollo Go RT6. They have it all they have it all the way down to $30,000 all in versus the Waymo. The last reported number is somewhere in that $175,000 range. Where do you guys fit on that scale?
We're closer to the Waymo end of the
Mhm.
spectrum there. But one of the again, that number is almost meaningless
Yeah.
because of quantities at which those vehicles are built for both Waymo and for us. If you're only building a few hundred vehicles a
Fair.
year, your costs are going to be high.
Right.
The advantage we have is that with partners like Toyota working with us, we have a path to scale these vehicles and bring the cost down dramatically. Now, the Chinese have done an amazing job at cost reduction,
Mhm.
but only in the same neighborhood.
Got it. And I think that's a fair point because obviously everyone wants to know what is the cost, and you're probably trying to tell them, hey, we've done a lot of research into this, and how do you, sort of extrapolate or depreciate some of those costs over time, and then of course, yeah, at smaller quantities. But let's talk a little bit about that Toyota integration. What are you feeling as far as, I guess like the kind of purpose designed vehicle, or is this kind of always going to be you have a vehicle from Toyota and then you're retrofitting after? Where do you guys kind of find that sweet spot, kind of realistic? Obviously there's the idealistic case, but also realistically, where do you want to get to in the next few years?
Yeah, absolutely. Here you're seeing some of the pragmatism of May that, of course, eventually they're going to be purpose-built vehicles where you don't
Right.
have a steering column and all of the space is opened up for revenue-paying customers.
Hmm.
But that's not the regulatory world that we live in today. If you want to be building a scalable ride-hail service today with autonomous vehicles, you're going to have to do what Waymo and May have done, which is
Yeah.
to use a vehicle that already meets federal motor vehicle safety standards and then do a retrofit. But then the question is, what does that path look like? And today, when we get the vehicles, we start out, our vehicles are born in Indiana
Mm.
on Toyota's Sienna production line. And
Cool.
then they go to a secondary facility, Toyota facility, where Toyota has dedicated manufacturing capacity to build vehicles for us.
Mm.
And then we do an additional upfit on top of that. And this is one of the reasons why the cost is high, because there's a lot of, take the vehicle apart, put it back together, take the
Yeah.
vehicle apart, put it back together. But all of that supply chain, we're all talking to each other. We all have
Mm.
the roadmap of when do we push, integration of the sensors upstream and have it done at the manufacturing plant.
Got it. And so when might that? I mean, I think there was a big announcement recently with Neuro and Lucid and Uber, and it sounded like, a few $100 million were going into, kind of what you just described right there, retro or, sort of working on that Lucid production line so that they could build these vehicles and sensors and, sort of integrate everything all at once. What do you think it would kind of take? Is there a monetary investment that needs to happen with Toyota to do that right now, or is it still a ways away for you guys?
Yeah, so this building vehicles is very expensive. And a lot
Yeah.
of startups have learned this
Kind
the,
of,
the
oh
hard
yeah,
way.
300 million, 100 million, right? Everyone just tosses these numbers around. It's a lot of money.
That's right. And it's not just a matter of doing it, but doing it at a level of consistency and quality
Hmm.
and scale.
Yeah.
That's something you literally can't buy. You have to have a partner that has just done this. And this is where, Toyota, I think, it has made a massive investment in the infrastructure needed to build these vehicles for us.
Yeah.
That's something we literally could not buy,
Hmm.
even with a big check like that.
Yeah. Do you think you're at the point right now where, we'll talk very shortly about, launching with Lyft, but do you think you're at the point where, okay, once you start doing paid driverless rides on Lyft or Uber, that you could quickly scale up because of this manufacturing setup with Toyota, or are the vehicles still a little too expensive to like pour gas on the fire?
Oh, I think with the Toyota can build as many vehicles as we want. That's one of the nice things about working with
Yeah.
a company like Toyota. The question then really is the unit economics and
Mm,
where can you make vehicles today? And so today at low quantities, our vehicles are more expensive. So our vehicles are only profitable in relatively premium ride hail markets. Same problem Waymo has with their Jaguar vehicles with a beautiful but expensive sensor configuration.
yeah.
But if the cost comes down, then we can scale into in markets where a Jaguar I-Pace would never be profitable, would just never be able to generate enough revenue. And that's part of the strategy that we have, which is to build a vehicle that can go into many environments and
Hmm.
still generate money. Now, the way that we do that, that actually opens up the market and will allow us to increase our scale faster because we know that we can go into not just market A, but market A, B, and C,
Yeah.
which drive volumes up, which drives our costs down.
Yeah, I like to remind people that the Jaguar I-Pace is a $75,000 car. So when you get into a Jaguar I-Pace, compared to the average 3-year-old used Toyota Prius, which is a $30,000 car, it's kind of not even apples to apples, right? You're basically sitting in an Uber Black level vehicle. I think the Sienna is probably closer to, sort of that Toyota Prius. And I think you mentioned something interesting too, that it does have a lot more space. You can do, XL rides, you can do XXL rides, you can do airport rides with luggage. I mean, the Waymo, I took 2 sets of golf clubs recently into a Waymo and it didn't fit. We had to put it in the front and it was on the steering wheel the whole time. And I was worried the car was going to crash.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, the vehicle, they've done a great job on the rider experience, but the platform is really a challenge for them.
Yeah. So, we've kind of teased this Lyft partnership, but you guys are currently testing in Atlanta with Lyft, I believe, with safety drivers. And by the time this podcast goes live, you may even be, sort of giving rides to the public, but we're recording here and we'll see when that timeline happens. Talk a little bit about that partnership and, maybe also why you picked Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question about viability, the unit economics of a vehicle
Hmm.
are in large part, what does your fire hose of demand look like?
Hmm.
How many trip requests do you have to choose from?
Yeah.
And so the advantage of working with Lyft or Uber or our other partners in the space is that we have a tremendous fire hose of trip
Hmm.
requests. And that's great because that means that we can reach into that fire hose of trip requests. Every time someone wants to go somewhere, we get to say, we'll take that ride.
Yeah.
We'll take that ride. That one's going to take us way over there, and
Yeah.
then we're going to have to deadhead back. It's not a good ride for us. Or, oh, that's a freeway trip. We don't like Waymo. We don't do freeways.
Got it.
So this is the challenge. The bigger your fire hose of trip requests is,
Hmm.
the more vehicles you can put out at a very high asset utilization. And so it can actually pay for the rev share. So
Hmm.
we're doing a rev share. Lyft makes money off of these rides too. But having that fire hose is so valuable because it allows us to drive the asset utilization.
Got it. And I mean, what does the sort of that top of funnel fire hose need to be relative to the fleet size where, at a certain point, right, if you have 10,000 vehicles and there's only 100,000 trips per day, you kind of have to take everything and maybe it's not so great of experience. What do you think is kind of the optimal, maybe starting point and then equilibrium?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. So the optimum fleet size is going to be a function of how big your fire hose is.
Mhm.
And if you go it alone and build your own app, you
Yeah.
actually have a couple problems. One is that you have your own customer acquisition costs.
Yeah.
You have to build the app, but then you're going to have probably a smaller fire hose of trip requests, which is going to mean more deadhead legs and lower asset utilization.
Hmm.
And the other problem that you have if you go it alone is that if you have limitations to your ODD, like with the wheres and whens you can
Yeah.
drive, like all of us do, Waymo, May, all have limitations in our ODD, then you're going to have upset customers if you don't have a fallback human network.
Yeah.
So every time you're you request a ride and the phone buzzes and says, "No, I can't take you there."
Yeah.
That's a bad rider experience.
Right.
And that's increasing the likelihood that someone's going to hit the uninstall button. And so this is another advantage of working with Lyft and Uber, that
Yeah.
fallback human network gives us a very gentle on-ramp to build and improve our technology over time. we do not need to solve all of Atlanta on day one.
Hmm.
We just need to be able to take enough of the rides out of the funnel to keep our vehicle fleet busy.
Yeah.
And as the technology improves over time and we can go into higher speeds or at night or whatever the situation is, then that just means we can support more vehicles in market. And there's no discontinuities along the way. It's a very smooth on-ramp to scaling the business.
Yeah. I had a Lyft executive on a panel I did, and I asked him a question about, what happens when someone opens a Lyft app and there's no cars available. And he thought for a second and said, you know what? We don't even have a KPI for that because it never happens. Right. Literally every time you open the Lyft app, there is a car available. Their goal is more that 3 to 5 minute ETA. And, I'm here in Los Angeles on Waymo all the time. Cars are, no cars available, too busy, 20, 25 minute ETAs. How come, it seems like that hasn't really negatively affected Waymo? It seemed there was a report from Obi that compares prices you may have seen. And, basically customers are willing to pay 30 to 40% more for a Waymo. They're willing to wait longer. Why do you think that is? And, how come you guys can't maybe take advantage of that on your own?
Oh, I think eventually we will for
Hmm.
sure. So I think what you're referencing is that a lot of people really prefer not having a driver in the car.
Yeah.
Every time you request a traditional ride hail vehicle, there's some probability that the driver makes you uncomfortable or the vehicle makes you uncomfortable. It's
Yeah.
dirty, whatever the
Driving
case is.
style.
Yeah, distracted driver who's on the phone the entire time. There's a lot of things that can go wrong.
Mhm.
When you are in an autonomous vehicle, it is a consistent level of service and
Yeah.
quality every time. It's a professionally managed fleet of vehicles with a driver that is always attentive, cautious, reliable, and you can sing along to the radio. Like
Yeah.
for me, like I'm an introvert. When I'm in the back of a car, I like to kind of zone out.
Mhm.
And you don't have the social pressure of
Yeah.
having a friendly, chatty driver. It's your space, and I think we're seeing people are willing to pay a premium for that. Today, when we launch, as we're launching on the Lyft network, this will be an opt-in
Mhm.
for the standard Lyft product, but I think it's quite likely that we'll quickly see the demand that this becomes an option at the onboarding. Like, do you want the standard product or do you
Yeah.
want an AV ride, which might come with the price premium?
Yeah. So let's talk about how that product is going to work for folks on Lyft in Atlanta, for example. It sounds like I open the Lyft app just like I normally would. I would need to opt in to AV rides and then I call a ride. And if there's one nearby and available, I'll get matched with one.
All subject to change until we actually launch, but
Yeah.
yes, that
Well,
is kind
and I won't hold you to any of this, but you can kind of talk about, theoretically, or also too, what's your ideal, kind of product experience too for riders?
so where we're starting is likely to look a lot like that. So it's the standard Lyft app. It's
Mhm.
not like, early rider access
Mhm.
program. It's the standard Lyft app. You request a ride, and if as your ride comes through our fire hose
Mhm.
and we go, that one,
Yeah.
you'll get a notification saying, "Hey, you've been matched with an autonomous vehicle." Is that
Mhm.
cool? And if you hit yes, then the rest of the Lyft experience is exactly as you would otherwise expect.
Got it.
Where we'll head over time is that I think we're going to see people really like the autonomous vehicle experience in the same way people liked it in San Francisco. And it might be something at the front door when you're saying, "Hey, I want a economy or an XL or an AV ride."
What do you think your ideal ride is in Atlanta? Distance, length, neighborhood, if you kind of could put your magic finger on it. Every ride could be that.
No, I think it's a ride that takes us to a place where we'll pick up our next ride.
Got it.
It's
So
simple as
staying
that.
busy.
Yep, it's asset utilization. Keep the vehicle moving people.
Got it. And what about length or, sort of distance, I guess time and distance, right? Do you mind or care about that?
Not so much. A lot of that's kind of worked out in the pricing model.
Mhm.
But for us, yeah, we're optimizing primarily for asset utilization.
Got it. I mean, one thing we always tell, human drivers over on the rideshare guy is that, you want a passenger in the car, you want the wheels moving, and you kind of want them moving fast, right? Freeway or, faster speeds, less in traffic, right? People are more willing to pay, for time where they're in the car, obviously, and then they're going somewhere fast, you might still have to charge for sitting in traffic, but you can't charge as much as, if you're getting them to their destination, right? So I guess on the revenue side, like those trips are typically the most valuable.
I think so. I think you also see in the airline industry, even the people who with the most expensive tickets, what
Mm.
do? They board first.
Yeah.
It's not because the plane's going to leave earlier, but the sooner they can get into the vehicle and get comfortable and pull out
Yeah.
their laptop and start getting to work, the sooner they're productive again. And so I think we'll find something similar with AVs, that even if the ride is not the shortest possible route,
Hmm.
that people view it as time that they get back, that they can actually be productive.
Yeah.
And, you know, we'll see people appreciate that.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess this has to be a negotiation that goes into every partnership with, an Uber or a Lyft, right? The rides that I guess, is it a negotiation? Like the rides that you want versus the rides that, maybe they want for their human drivers? How do you think about that kind of balance?
I think there's a really happy synergy. Forgive me for
Hmm.
using the word, but I think it's actually the right word. That, nobody's autonomous vehicles can go and do everything today.
Yeah.
And so we want to maintain a really great experience for riders with the short wait time.
Hmm.
Every ride that we can take frees up a human driver to do a ride that we can't.
Hmm. Got it. And, one thing that I think is really valuable, so Uber and Lyft, I think they talk a lot when they're courting AV partners. They talk a lot about what you said, the demand generation. They talk a lot about keeping fleets utilized. And then the third thing that I haven't really seen them mention, but I think is valuable, and I would love to hear your opinion, is the first rider experience, right? So obviously everyone who's an AV enthusiast and who's taken a Waymo or, loves technology, like I think they're going to jump on, and I think they're the ones willing to wait longer and pay more. I don't think the average rideshare customer is going to do that. And I think on Lyft and Uber, kind of like you said, it can be a great first experience, right? You'll get matched. It's a reasonable waiting time. Maybe you throw a 50% discount. Okay, now my first AV ride is half off. Okay, that's pretty sweet, like you do for a lot of first time customers. How important do you think that first time, kind of average rideshare customer experience will be in the long run?
Yeah, one of the fun things is that this is not our first time deploying autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
So we've deployed autonomous vehicles across 15 plus cities over the course of our history, ranging from rural cities in northern Minnesota to big cities like Detroit and Miami.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we have seen across all of these is that if someone has a real transportation need,
Hmm.
like you need to get to the airport, or you need to get to the grocery store or to your doctor's appointment, people get over any anxiety about how they're going to get there very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think when you get off at the airport and you got to get to a meeting and you pull out your phone and you request a traditional ride hail vehicle, 15 years ago, if someone said, yeah, you're going to do that, and some random person is going to come up and drive you to your
Yeah.
destination, you'd be like, that's crazy. I wouldn't do that. But the
Yeah.
reality, when you've got a place to be, you are going to optimize for convenience. And so I think that will drive many first-time riders into, all right, I got to get to the doctor's appointment. The AV's here.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to solve my problem. And then they're going to get in and be like, oh, this is great. And I think
Hmm.
that's how we're going to win a lot of hearts and minds.
If you had to pick one KPI that kind of is going to matter the most to riders, what do you think it's going to be? Maybe in 1, 2, 3 years, kind of the near-ish future.
Convenience.
Convenience.
So the number one thing that I think we see consumers optimize for is convenience.
Mhm.
How do you make the entire process frictionless from ride hailing to the car showing up, to you unlocking the doors, to you getting to your destination?
Got
So that you can worry less about all of the mechanics of
it.
getting a
Hmm.
car
Yeah.
and just go. Like, I think this is one of the things that people really dislike about today's rental car
Hmm. Oh, yeah.
experience. That is super inconvenient. I
Wait in
made a
line.
reservation in
Yeah.
advance and I still have to check in at the dang desk, like for no apparent reason. Like, it is not convenient. And so the winners in this space will be the ones that can provide this really frictionless service. And I think one of the big challenges is that we also need to go beyond just the ride hail. And part of the mission and vision of our company is, yes, we're gonna do the ride hail, but
Hmm.
we also want to work with public transit too. If you want to get downtown, and if we just substitute a personally owned car ride with a May Mobility, a Sienna, okay, maybe we've helped with traffic safety. We've probably helped with parking, but we haven't done anything about congestion.
Yeah.
And so part of what we need to do is to make a frictionless experience that integrates with mass scale mobility, like light rail and trams and things like that. So that is part of the journey that we're on, and finding partners that can help us build these really frictionless
Yeah.
experiences. That's how we win. I sometimes talk about like the battle of the finger. And if
Hmm.
you are requesting a ride and like the little blue Waymo button, oh, Waymo's available. And you're like,
Yeah.
and then Yellow pops up. Oh, Zoox is available. Green pops up for May. Oh yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Like that's when we know we've won. When people see the little green circle pop up, I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. If I get that, I'm going to have an easy experience. I'm not gonna have to fiddle.
Well, and what do you think? I think this is a big question that, as other AV players come into the space and start doing rides, why am I going to take a May Mobility ride, as a customer over another, right? If another is plugged into the Lyft or Uber network and they kind of have all that, they're going to be going after a lot of the same things as you. Like, why? What do you think is the reason I, as a customer, I'm going to be like, I need a May Mobility vehicle right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is convenience. But if it's a high on
But
convenience,
convenience is sort of, so I think convenience encompasses things like, okay, the vehicle is 3 to 5 minutes away. It's a low and consistent price, right? If it's 20 minutes away, that's kind of inconvenient. If it's really
totally.
expensive, that's inconvenient. If other players are plugged into the same networks, they're kind of going to be, in the same ballpark of that ETA, of that low and consistent price, right?
Not necessarily. It depends on
I
how
guess if
many
their
people
vehicles are
are in the
very
market.
expensive.
Yeah, and how expensive their vehicles are. I think convenience, I totally agree with you that
Mhm.
expected time is going
Yeah.
to weigh very heavily on people. Like it's
So I
really
guess, yeah, narrowing down, what's one thing, I as a customer, I don't know, you think I'm going to be thinking generally about convenience or, oh my God, I love that vehicle or, what's the sort of one narrow thing you think I might pick as a customer or does it even matter?
I think convenience first, and
Mhm.
then second thing, a lot of those sort of less tangible brand things will pop up.
Mhm.
For example, I think the miracle that Apple's pulled off with iPhone is that you've got this mass market product.
Mhm.
More people own iPhones than just about any other brand, but it's still kind of viewed as a premium product.
Gotcha.
And so if you can make your product feel, if people feel a particular way when using your product
Yeah.
and they like that feeling, then that's going to help. And for us, part of that feeling that we're going for is that you have control over your life, that you get to go where you want, that you're empowered. It's a sense of freedom. The same sort
Yeah.
of sense of freedom that I might have had when I was 16 and I got my driver's license. Getting
Yeah.
my driver's license, that was my totem of freedom and independence.
Definitely.
Hailing a main mobility vehicle can be like getting your driver's license to people,
Yeah.
now who care less about the driver's license, but still care about freedom.
For sure. So, are there any downsides to, or I guess what, there's got to be some. So, what are the downsides, or what's one downside to partnering with a third party, kind of one of these demand aggregators? For example, we featured a story in our newsletter recently from Business Insider, Alex Bitter. He talked about this Uber user in Atlanta. You might have seen this story, who kept canceling rides until they got matched for the Waymo, right? Because you kind of similarly have to opt in and, got a human cancel. I think he canceled 20 rides before he finally got a Waymo. And, so I guess what do you think are some of the downsides?
Well, so there's probably two that pop to mind. One is that we have to we share the revenue with them.
Hmm.
So unlike the sort of Waymo approach where you might be using the Waymo app, Lyft and Uber get a share of the revenue generated. That's one. That's offset in large part by the fire hose that we talked
Right.
about before. The other one really is that there are some components of the rider experience that Lyft owns and some components of the rider experience that we own.
Mhm.
So it creates additional work for us to make sure that we really achieve that seamless frictionlessness
Yeah.
that we want. It's just two parties that have to work together to build that frictionless onboarding experience.
Got it. How might you solve, because that's sort of how the, Waymo on Uber product in Atlanta works right now, is you have to opt in to get a Waymo on Uber. And then if one is available and probably meets, very similar criteria, they match you with one. But in Atlanta, I think they said they only have dozens of vehicles. So it's guys like these are, canceling probably a lot of rides. How might you solve that situation? Or how do you think about that situation? Is it okay for riders? Hey, sorry, if you want a May, you might not always get one. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't.
Well, I think this is in a lot of ways a first class problem to have
Yeah.
when the demand is so high. So then the question is, if you're actually losing money on every ride, it might be like, well, but I'm not going to scale my fleet to, another 100 vehicles if I'm
Yeah.
losing money on every ride. But if you've been really careful and you have a vehicle that is optimized for bill of materials price and total cost of ownership, and you're actually generating positive margin business, then that is the best problem you can possibly have. Because
Yeah.
now that's okay. Let's put another 50 vehicles on route. Let's put another 100 vehicles on route. And
Yeah.
that's really where we're aiming to be.
Very cool. So wrapping up, you've been in the industry for 20 years and we're at a big inflection point, maybe the most exciting time with paid driverless rides. By the time this podcast goes live, May on Lyft may be live in Atlanta. And where do you see sort of the next few years going? What are you kind of most focused on and also excited about?
Yeah, I think really it's the technology has come so fast, and we're
Hmm.
seeing really a flourishing of a lot of different technology approaches. But there's a lot of things that we all seem to agree upon. We all seem to agree that data is good. Being able to use data to train your system is good. But what I'm really excited about right now is I actually see a parallel between the AV industry today and the large language model world of
Mhm.
about 18 months ago. And so what do I mean by that? Like if you ask ChatGPT 3.5,
Yeah.
what's the name of the little red fruit with the seeds on the outside? I don't know if you know, that's a strawberry.
Yeah.
So how does ChatGPT 3.5 know that? Because as it was trained on the entire internet, someone had bothered to write down, did you know that? But then it said strawberry.
Mm.
And now you say, well, okay, ChatGPT 3.5, how many R's are there in strawberry? And it just wrote strawberry, right?
Right.
But it will give you the wrong answer. It'll tell you
Mm.
that there are two R's in strawberry. Why? Because in the training data that it has, nobody ever actually bothered to write down, by the way, there are two R's in strawberry. And so it wasn't in the training set. And so it wasn't able to regurgitate that fact on demand.
Mhm.
But now that if you asked DeepSeek or one of the reasoning models, how many R's are there in Strawberry, they're trained on essentially the same data. But now they can say, well, I don't know how many R's there are in Strawberry, but I do know how to spell strawberry.
Mhm.
STR, there's one.
Mm.
AWER, there's two. R, there's three. Y, there are three R's in Strawberry. And so what we're seeing in the large language model space is this transition into reasoning models. And this
Mhm.
is hugely important because reasoning is what allows you to take a foundational model that works pretty well,
Yeah.
but then apply it to a larger set of scenarios that might be outside of your original training set.
Mhm.
This is already, the now the standard approach in large language models. But where's the AV world? The
Yeah.
exciting, the sort of funny thing is the AV world is in ChatGPT 3.5 era. Everyone is still arguing about how much data they have, who's got the most data, and who's going to be able to train the biggest network. And nobody's talking about reasoning.
Mm.
But reasoning is a huge part of driving. Every time you are driving, you are encounter one of a kind situations like how many
Right.
are there in
I mean,
strawberry?
that's how humans drive. They drive more of a reasoning model than, based on, oh, I was at the stop sign yesterday. I should stop, right?
That's right. We have both a visual cortex and a prefrontal cortex. This is more like your pattern matching, and this is more of
Mhm.
your. And I think it's very clear that autonomous vehicles need the same thing
Mhm.
because you find yourself in one of a kind situations all the time.
Yeah.
And this is where AVs can misbehave if they are using purely feed forward, foundational models.
Got it.
So what we're excited about is that I think we are the only AV company in the industry that's adding a reasoning model on top of our foundational models.
Got it.
So what this has allowed us to do is to go and be able to navigate through areas that are different than
Mhm.
what we've trained on. Now, not like we wouldn't be able to drive on the moon, but we can
Well,
find
actually, it might be
ourselves.
easy to drive on the moon, right?
Yeah, that's probably a
Nothing
bad
ahead.
example. But this is a huge moment for us because
Mhm.
we feel like we are now at this intersection of having
Yeah.
a unique technology that's scaling, the commercial opportunity of Lyft and Uber working with us, this market sentiment that AVs are exciting and that people are willing to wait longer and pay more for them.
Yeah.
And so this is an amazing time for the industry, and we're excited to be here.
Definitely. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Sounds like I need to make a trip out to Atlanta very soon. But Ed, really appreciate you coming on. And for those who want to learn May Mobility, I'm sure they can head to your website and probably sounds like maybe take a ride in Atlanta soon too. Does that sound right?
That sounds right. Be fun.
All right, Ed. Take care.
Thank you.